Hi, and welcome to another episode of Walleye Chronicles, where we sit down with each and every one of you and have a conversation about how you grew up fishing and how it's changed your life and how it's affected your life. This week, I have a young entrepreneur on today. Collin Marten's with us. How you doing, Collin?
Good, man. How are you doing?
Not too bad. So let's get into it right away. What's your first fish you remember that you remember?
It's quite a while ago, actually. I got a birthday coming up and turning 31, so it's been quite a while. But I think the first real good memories is on Lake Emily in kind of central Wisconsin fishing.
Yep.
So with my grandfather catching bass, and actually remember catching my first walleye with him.
So were you there fishing for the bass and he was fishing for the bluegill? Because I do know that lake. Was that kind of like his bluegill lake, but you were doing the bass fishing?
Yeah, so we have a cottage out there.
Okay.
So we were out actually just running some slip bobbers with some leeches and crawlers, kind of whatever bit. And
Yep.
yeah, I ended up running into an 18-inch walleye. So
Nice. I grew up in that area, so we were kind of banging the area around. My dad, big bluegill guy, so he would be bluegill fishing. I'd be trying to throw stuff in the front, try to get fish to go. So, growing up, you were obviously that lake was a part of how you grew up fishing.
yeah, it's really where I cut my teeth fishing. Learning, obviously not just understanding the body of water, but just going out there repetitively and fishing. So yeah, Lake Emily is kind of my home lake of where I started, and definitely expanded on it over the last 20 years or so. But yeah, fishing out there is kind of where I really started getting a love for going out and going fishing, understanding the body of water, figuring out how to catch fish.
Do you remember the first time you went by yourself?
I do. It was my grandfather wasn't too keen on me going out in the boat until I had boater safety. So I was like 12, and it was a thunderstorm. Just got my boater safety the day before. Out there bass fishing on a 16.
You were going out no matter what.
Yeah, 16-foot pontoon boat with no trolling motor, just drifting and casting as far as I could and going through some weed patches. So
Did you catch fish?
no.
What was the first time you went out by yourself and you caught fish? Did you think you were going to be the next Bill Dance after that?
I'd probably say the next day, actually. Yeah, the next morning I went back out, and I love throwing a frog.
Okay.
So back then I was throwing a frog on a spinning rod because I wasn't throwing bait casters. So that was quite an adventure going through the weeds. But yeah, up there, any fish around central Wisconsin, I feel like largemouth love frogs middle of summertime. So yeah,
frogs are a blast to throw.
Oh,
you figure it out. You can have so much fun throwing frogs.
Yeah. To watch a blow up on a frog and, lynch one of them is pretty sweet. So
I think the hardest part is learning to throw the bait caster, not necessarily.
Yeah. I've, ironically, I was never much of a bait caster guy, and finally I had one. And after about 6 or 7 bird nests, I finally figured out how to dial in the brakes and everything else. So yeah, it was, that's a learning curve in itself for sure. Yeah.
I made sure I put one in my son's hand pretty quick, because I honestly probably didn't have a bait caster till maybe 5 years ago.
Sure.
As a walleye guy, we don't, unless you're trolling with it, that doesn't really come across your world of having a bait caster.
Well, and obviously everybody has their different approach and what they feel comfortable with too. So, there's a lot of versatility with a bait caster that you can use, pulling bottom bouncers and stuff like that, because you can just change your depth so fast, where spinning rods can do the same thing, but it's a lot easier when you just can click a button, drop it down, and click it again. So
that's right. Although I see a lot more of the bass guys with spinner rods in their boats now.
Yeah, I think, with pressure on bodies of water too, I think that fish, especially like bigger bodies of water that get hit continuously, those fish aren't dumb by any means. Right. So you got to kind of get more of a finesse approach to them than just dragging, a swim bait or just a chatterbait through some grass. Like sometimes you just got to accurately target them.
So when did you first figure out, on Emily, and you started catching fish? When did you was there a time where you're like, okay, I can catch fish out here all the time. I can do this. Yeah.
Well, they used to have, Kmart, back when Kmart was around, they used to have these 7-inch purple twisted worms with 3 hooks in them.
Yep.
And, that was my number one go-to bait. So, but I think, I don't necessarily believe that just going out on Lake Emily was one of those things, because, I grew up here in the Fox Cities in Appleton, and where my dad has lived for quite a while is kind of right on the Fox River down in the flats.
Okay.
So most of the time in the summertime, when we were kids, we would take the bikes and a couple tackle boxes and just go pound the banks, up and down, basically from Peabody Park towards, Cacon or Little Chute there, all the way up to
So what were you fishing for? Anything that bit or just bass?
smallmouth usually.
Smallmouth.
Yeah. I mean, there's a predominant amount of smallmouth in the Fox River and some really good ones. Obviously, everybody fishes Butte more early in
Yep.
the year. But as you work down through, the sections of river, there's, especially when it's low water, it's easy to target them because
bet.
they can't go as far as they usually can when there's high
That's
water.
true. So what was it like with your buddies? Was it an all day affair?
Yeah, I think so. Kind of talking about history growing up and everything like that. Obviously, my dad had a bad accident back in 2001. He became a quadriplegic, and so I'd spend some time down there with him and everything. Obviously, we couldn't go fishing, but there's a lot of times where we'd hang out, and he would be able to go up and down the trail, and we could go together because we were on the bank. They have a nice walking trail and stuff like that, so we could kind of go do that. But that was kind of one of those things that, and I'm a huge proponent for it now too, is like whatever you got going on in life, you can always grab a rod and there's always a place to go fishing. You don't have to have a boat,
That's correct. Yeah.
right? As long as you got the will and drive to go find some fish, like there's plenty of fish no matter where you live. I don't care if it's a farm pond, a retention pond, at an apartment complex, golf course if
Yep.
you golf,
Yep.
or anywhere, just walking up and down the river or anything like that. Like that's a good outlet for a lot of people.
Yep. I think that's a lot of us that really fish. I think that the drive to do it is set from when we're younger, when we're 12 to 16, finding a place to go, because none of us have boats. That's kind of your time to do it on your own. I mean, as a kid when I was growing up, it was getting down to the river and getting there and spend as much time with your buddies or wherever you had to spend time with, but you didn't really have the opportunities to get on boats. At least I didn't, growing up.
Yeah, and I mean, I had quite a few opportunities. I mean, I have some family that lives, on the Wolf River. So, I mean, I'm not a huge, like, now there's so many ways that you can get on the water too, like kayaks and all that stuff. That wasn't really a thing back when I was kind of growing up. So, I mean, I would also be the guy that stand at the boat ramp though too and be like, hey, you going fishing? Like, I got $10 in my pocket for some gas. So, yeah, I think it's just about the drive though, really. Like if you can figure out, if there's a will, there's a way you can get out there. So, and you don't have to have, hundreds of dollars in tackle, hundreds of dollars in rods. I mean, you can do it pretty cheap. So,
So what bait shops? I'm pretty sure the Real Shot wasn't open then. But what bait shops do you remember as a kid that you had to go to or wanted to go to?
well, Kmart was a good one.
Yep.
They used to have one in Wapaka, so we would stop in there on the way up to the cottage all the time. And usually they had a bargain bin full of stuff. So you could get a lot of baits for pretty cheap and just rotate and you lose them. Like, it's not the end of the world. As far as bait shops go, the one I only really remember was Cash's in New London that we'd always stop at way back in the day, which is still open actually today. But I guess I really don't recall bait shops. Yeah, I mean, I remember when the Real Shot did open, when they were opened up in Oshkosh.
Yep.
I went down there. I think I had my driver's license or just had my driver's license, I think it was 2011 they opened, 2012, something like
in
that.
area, yeah.
Yeah. So I had my driver's license from 2009 or something. So yeah, I mean, obviously I love the Real Shot.
Yep.
The Real Shot's done a lot of great things for me as well. So, I mean, anything that I can do to support them. And it's been an adventure for sure. I mean, even when I was living in California, I would still buy stuff from them here. So yeah.
It's just funny you get like some shops as a kid where you remember the old school shops, but you're a little younger than I am, so you don't have those old kind of corner bait shops that I grew up with.
Yeah.
So growing up fishing, when do you think, looking back now, that you just thought that this was going to be something you want to do all the time? That was going to be a passion of yours? Was there a moment in time where you're like, oh man, I'm going to do this forever?
Well, I think obviously, a lot of people can relate to it. Saturday mornings turning on Bassmasters and watching those guys fish at that level was kind of one of those things like, holy crap, I don't know how to do that, but I'd love to do that someday. And then back a long time ago, the PWT was, traveling around here and was fortunate enough to go over to Winneconne and watch one of the events. And I saw all the boats and saw everybody that was there. And I was like, man, I'd like to do that someday. But But when I started really tournament fishing, one of my best friends, he and I fished the Fort Fremont Walleye Classic. That was the first real event that I ever fished, and we ended up taking, I think, sixth place or something like that. And I just, growing up, like I was competitive. I played sports. I love that competitive drive. So as you get older, right, you start to realize like, hey, you're 5'10", you're not playing basketball. You're definitely probably not going to go play baseball.
Yep.
So the fishing piece of it is that it doesn't matter your height, doesn't matter any of that, right? You can go out and do it, and it's something that you can do for years, right? You can do it all the way until look at Rick Clunn, for instance, right? I mean, the guy's 70 some years old and still hammering, and he's been doing it for 40 years.
Right.
So it's one of those sports that doesn't matter what age group you're in, you can still compete at. So,
But was there a moment that you're like, I'm doing this? I'm gotta find time to do
I think when the Walleye League was around,
doing that stuff.
yeah. So that was, I finally figured out, there was obviously the FLW Walleye League that was in Wisconsin. And my mom actually used to drive me to tournaments and have to sign a waiver because Sonny Reynolds wouldn't allow me to sign for myself. So yeah, but she would drive me to Petenwell, drive me to the Bay, drive me to Bago and everything like that. And then obviously when I was 16, she still had to go because she had to sign the waiver. But that's when, you started really getting that competitive edge. And I think 2009, I fished the FLW Tour Eastern Division, I think it was, right here on Bago. Ended up, I think, taking sixth place as a co-angler.
Nice.
And that was kind of one of those things like, you can actually,
I can do this.
Yeah, I can do this. And then, shortly thereafter, I ended up, graduating high school. Had a couple boats. I think I had a Tuffy 19 foot or 20 foot Tuffy, fished local bar tournaments, stuff like that. And then made a decision to, join the military. So I went out to California, went out to Virginia and started picking up bass fishing because there's not too many walleyes out there in California and Virginia.
Nope.
So, that's, I still, no matter, like I said, no matter where you are in life, no matter what you're doing, there's always that opportunity to go out and fish and fish competitively. So, but yeah, I think back, around that 2008-9 time frame, I started looking into it and I was like, I could probably fish competitively.
Have you fished bass tournaments as well?
I have.
What do you prefer?
I think walleyes is where my heart's at. There's really nothing better than watching a big gold bar come out of clear water. So,
Big gold bar.
yeah, there's just something about a walleye coming up and, especially when you're targeting them with a casting rod or anything like that. I love trolling too, don't get me wrong, but when you're watching fish come out of the clear water like that, it's kind of hard to beat.
And you're a younger guy, so you're probably into the live scope.
Well,
Ish.
actually, I just sold, so it's talking about the entrepreneurship piece of it. I don't own a boat right now anymore. So, yeah, quite a humbling experience.
Well, you don't have time if all your work you're doing.
Yeah. So, as far as the live scope goes, I think, to speak on that piece of it, I had live scope for a while on one of my bass boats, in different various situations. Like, I'm not the guy that's going to go out and fish offshore for bass.
I gotcha.
I understand kind of more of the John Cox style, Greg Hackney, 10 feet or less, put a flipping rod in there and just start beating the bank or a spinner bait, something like that, right? So I was never the person that, I'm not the guy that's going to go jump out on a hump in the middle of the lake and go cast a crankbait at 20 feet for giant fish. Now, that's also bit me in the butt quite a few times, especially like fishing on Green Lake. It's an awesome place to use that. But I think, as far as talking about electronics and live scope and everything else, it's, there's so many different variations of that now. It's good, right? You got 360, you have live, you have live scope, you have Lowrance's version of it, active target. And it's all good, but there's so many variables that go into utilizing that, and there's so many things that you have to factor in when using that, right? So sometimes you can get so focused in that you're missing everything else around you.
That's correct.
Where a piece like 360 is a great unit because you're getting a full version of what's happening, right? And you can see fish if they're moving, if they're not, if they're around structure, if they're not. And at the end of the day, like, the best thing I can say about all of that is it doesn't matter what electronics piece you have. It doesn't matter how many you have on your boat. If you can't digest the information off that screen and put it into your head and actually understand what's happening in front of you and apply it,
Yeah.
It's useless.
Yeah. Right.
So
So let's go back to your first boat.
first boat, yeah, it was a 16-foot Fisher tiller with a 25 horse Merc on it.
How'd the Merc run?
It was good.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a 1989. I had electric start on it even.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Trolling motor?
Yep. Had a Minn Kota. I don't even remember what they're called, but the little tiller handle one.
Okay. Yep. I know those.
Yeah.
What modifications did you, speaking of somebody that does modifications boats, what modifications did you do to that Fisher boat? Anything, or just kind of put on the water as much
I mean,
as possible?
it came pretty well like set up. I mean, the guy that I had bought it from, well, the only modification I really did was put some JB Weld on the bottom because there was a bunch of leaks. So that was crucial piece number one. Put a bilge pump in it, and I actually started fishing, Red Banks tournament and stuff
Yep.
like right out of at 16 years old. I had a GMC Sonoma on a 16-foot boat, and like,
You're good to go, man.
oh, I was
That's life.
rolling. Yeah. Yeah. And then I just got the addiction, buying boats almost, well, not so much then, but, I had two boats out in California, came home and I rolled through probably 6 or 7 boats. Yeah, I'd usually buy one as a winter project or something like that and turn one every time. Or if there was a good deal, like it was hard to beat.
It's hard not to. There was a point in time in my life where I believe I had 5 boats at home, and finally the wife said I had to kind of get rid of some. But
yeah, I never had 5 at one time, but I would always find one, run it, do something with it, or like if it was a really good deal.
It's tough to pass up good deals on boats because they're going to sell. They're going to.
Yeah.
Be,
Well,
especially at the time of the year too. You're in the fall, and you're like, look at these great deals in fall. All I have to do is hold on it for another 4 months, and I'm going to make some money.
yeah. Well, and even too, like, I mean, I've gone and I've traveled probably further than what anybody should for a boat, but I usually try to make an adventure out of it. So my mom's probably my number one fan. So she would travel with me. Like we've gone, down to Kentucky to buy a boat and stuff, but you bring it back, you work on it like over the winter, especially like we went down one time, I think it was in March, came back, put a bunch of carpet back then, right? Yeah. Now I'm thinking back like, man, it's so dumb to put carpet in, but redo the carpet, put a graph on it, update the batteries and everything like that. And, you could at least sell it for what you all have into it and fish out of it for a year or two or whatever.
True.
And, as you go along in life, you start to realize like, okay, you have a 7-inch screen. Well, then you put a 9 on. You're like, well, I'm not going back to a 7-inch screen. I got to have a 9. Then you go to a 12, and so you keep upgrading, and horsepower gets bigger and better, and you start building on it. But I think one of the benefits of that too is that I've been in a lot of boats, not only fishing as a co-angler on different tournament circuits, but also buying a boat, running it, seeing what the advantages are, what not the advantages are. So you kind of figure out what to look for in your next boat and how you want to
set up.
Yeah.
So that first boat, what electronics did you have on that? Did you have anything on there?
Yeah, I had a LMS 522, I think, with the internal puck color graph. Yeah, 2D sonar and a
Wasn't
map.
terrible.
No, great.
Way to start off.
Yeah. Especially when you didn't have to mount, wire the puck. It was all internal right there. You just plug it in and go to town.
That's pretty. Any issues with that boat? Any problems? Everything ran well for you? Never got stranded anywhere?
Yeah, no, I didn't really have any issues. And I think I had it. There was a guy that was looking for a motor, so I stupidly sold that thinking I was going to repower the boat, go to a 40 horse. Never did that. Just ended up selling to a guy for a duck boat. Yeah, and just kind of let that one fizzle out. And then the next boat, I don't even remember what. Oh, I bought a Javelin. Yeah, Javelin bass boat. I think I was 17 years old. I was a junior in high school. And so I'd always roll in there, pickup truck and a boat, and, pulling in the parking lot. Like, whoever's got the truck and boat out there, you need to go ahead and move that. So I was that guy. And fishing wasn't popular in high school at that point either, especially.
You didn't have tournament. You didn't have the high school leagues in like you do now.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you had the FLW Walleye League that I participated in, but that was kind of a weekend thing. Obviously, I wasn't dragging my boat to those events either. But, you bring your boat to high school then, and it's like, what is that kid doing?
Right.
Like, why are you doing that? So it wasn't a popular thing. And now, I mean, I look back and I'm like, man, I wish I would have had the opportunity to fish in, high school and college, etc.
Yeah, there's so many opportunities, more opportunities now for the kids coming up that want to do something. Just have the passion for it to start in high school and then to move on to college if they want as well. So
yeah, and I mean, I think that there's a lot of people, that kind of reevaluated everything, from that 2010 to now kind of thing, where like that hunter-gatherer mentality
Yep.
has always been in the blood of a lot of people, which is also probably the backbone of the United States. So there's a lot of people that have always grown up, enjoying those memories,
Yep.
from generation to generation, going out on the lake on the weekends,
Yep.
going fishing, going hunting, doing that stuff. And so to incorporate it into the schools was an awesome thing.
For sure.
Yeah, I think people just finally realize that, college isn't your only opportunity, and like you don't have to just play basketball, baseball,
Football.
yeah, football. Like there's things that, and people don't always have that ability.
Yeah, back in the day, it was you either played those sports or you were in Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts or whatever it was.
Right.
There was nothing. There was not a third option. I mean, there was, but it wasn't as popular. It wasn't mainstream as it is now.
Right.
I mean, fishing's become very, very mainstream, especially in the bass world. I know walleye kind of lacking behind here, but maybe someday.
Yeah, and I think obviously, you got to look at the fishing market and you got to see where the companies are going to invest their time into. Like bass, you can go to probably at least a lower 48,
Yep.
and catch them.
Yep.
So, they can provide a platform because they're going to get the exposure on it. Where walleye fishing, pretty much limited. Well, I wouldn't say limited, right? I mean, people are starting to realize that you can catch walleyes.
Yep.
In a lot more places than you used to be able to, right?
And
like
how you catch them too. Everybody wanted, catch them a certain way always. And now is, we talked a little before we started about, the amount of bass lures that are in the walleye world now is crazy.
And I mean, just, as more, I think, as the internet gives more exposure and people start to realize, I mean, now you look at it, you can go from the Columbia River all the way to New York and catch walleyes.
That's true.
And you can go through the whole upper Midwest, basically the whole upper part of the United States and catch them from Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, all the way
There's
through.
clubs in all those areas too. A lot of those areas have their own little clubs that are getting going that are helping promote that area.
And there's a place I think down, not was it Kansas or there's not Kansas, Arkansas. There's a big lake down there that you can go down, and I think the PWT even used to fish back down there a long time ago. So yeah, I mean, as more information becomes readily available. Before, you used to be able to go buy a book, and Mr. Walleye,
Right.
read it and go, okay, like I can hook a crawler and hook and drag it through some mud or drag it through some weeds and catch them. Where now, I mean, guys are building YouTube videos. I mean, they're building their careers off YouTube videos. They're doing, I mean, just there's so much information out there, and I mean, which is good. But I also think that too, there's a ton of information where so many more people are going out and doing it, which live scope and all that other stuff. I mean, how's it going to affect the fishery in 10 years?
Right. I mean, I think the regulations are coming down, so it's going to help with that.
Yeah.
So growing up, you are a younger fella, so there was more stuff on TV. What was your go-to to turn on to watch?
Turn on to watch. I think Bassmasters was really the deal. Yeah. Like I was never really the cartoon kind of kid.
I
on
meant
Saturday
like
morning.
TV shows, like fishing TV shows, like In Fisherman, Babe Winkleman, Bassmaster shows.
Yeah,
Any of those
I mean,
guys?
obviously
Any of those
Bassmasters for watching, like that tournament series and everything else. And then I wouldn't say I really was an In Fisherman kind of guy just because it bounced around too much. But I mean, I would say Linder's Angling Edge was probably the best one.
Yep.
That I watched consecutively. Obviously, Babe Winkleman was obviously always on there too. Channel 40 on, I think, Fox Sports back in the day. So, and then, when the Next Bite came out, like that was the innovative piece of, between muskies, northerns, and walleyes, which kind of crazy to watch those guys, when I was so young. And then now having the opportunity to travel with them is crazy how stuff comes full circle.
Yeah, they kind of really put the final step into a TV show of the graphics and kind of their detail of how they get into what and how they're doing it.
Right. Yeah, and I think, obviously just speculation. I think, Gary and Keith looked at it and realized that there was an opportunity to really build something hardcore for the guys that were up here and catching the fish that were around where they live, right? Because it's not advantageous for you to watch Bassmasters down on Lake Okeechobee if you don't have a car and you don't have a bass boat. Like, it's cool to watch, but you can't really relate to flipping grass when you live in northern Minnesota. So.
That's correct. Yeah, there's not that same kind of stuff up there. You need the same things that at least I may be close to doing. That's why always drove me to watching the In Fisherman as a kid, because they used to be catfish and they'd be doing something that I'm doing, because there wasn't, back in the day, there wasn't most of the shows when I was growing up was all bass related. So it
Yep.
was Bill Dance, it was Virgil, and all those other guys that were just bass guys. There was nothing else. I mean, they hardly would never even catch a smallmouth. It was all just largemouth,
Right.
largemouth, which is for somebody that wants to watch fishing. It doesn't matter. I'm going to watch fishing no matter what.
Right.
You know,
That,
just
yeah.
like,
At some point when you're watching somebody just catch one, like,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm either, even now, if the MPFL's on, I'm gonna watch it just to watch a tracker, right? Just to have it up on my computer, or on the weekends when one of them what's one on the weekend MLF is on, watching those guys, they're trying
Yeah.
to make the cuts and stuff. It's kind of interesting to see that stuff.
Well, I think it's relatable too. Like if you like we talk about tournament fishing and being competitive, like you get that sense of like, man, what happens if you catch one? What happens if you don't catch one? Like you have something to relate to. So it's you get a little bit more enjoyment out of it instead of like watching tennis if you don't play tennis, right? So yeah, you understand the feeling. I mean, obviously not at certain levels and everything, but yeah, like you can relate to it. So I think you enjoy it a little bit more. Yeah, the MPFL is awesome thing to watch. I mean, any of the platforms now having the ability to just watch it online is pretty sweet.
Yeah,
So
it's tough to get work done sometimes when I got that up on the side screen and you're kind of
yeah,
watching, right?
yeah.
Or head to head was I mean, it was great, but it was terrible for my work production. I couldn't get anything done. I couldn't get it done. It would be on all the time. I'd have it and if I left my office, I'd throw out my phone. It'd be sitting on my dash. I'd drive in. It just always was on. I couldn't pull my head away.
Yeah, I mean, watching like I fished head to head actually when it first started, like on the bass side of things, and then watching it evolve and grow into the walleye thing. Yeah, I mean, it was well, and it's something where it's more local when it's started.
You're on the lakes,
Yeah, so they're fishing bodies of water. So not only the guys that fish it, or you have buddies that are fishing it, you're cheering them on. So yeah, productivity I'm sure was not the highest that it could have been. So, but yeah, I mean, it was. Yeah, I love head to head.
So you fish tournaments.
Yep.
You do co-angler stuff generally on the bigger tournaments.
Yep. So I fish. This is my second season fishing the full National Walleye Tour on the co-angler side.
Okay. But you've been fishing walleye co's for quite a while. Right? You said PM.
Yeah, on and off. Back like I said, like the league, and then some MWS events where actually one of the guys that I fished with as a co-angler, we fished those as team tournaments back then. And then when the tour would come to here on Bago, I would fish that. And then I didn't really fish much as a co-angler, from the time that I graduated high school all the way until I actually moved back home. Last year was the first year that I fished the full circuit.
And you didn't have a terrible year last year either.
No, I was pretty, to go out there your first year and, just fish it and learn everything to be able to make it to the championship was huge, because before it was not points related. You could just go.
Yep.
Well, now you had to make the cut last year. And fortunately, I think we were in 14th place. So John and I were both there on day one and 14th, and then had probably the most epic day of walleye fishing I'll probably ever have.
So tell me about that day.
Yeah. Actually, funny story. It started the night before. So John actually had a piece of paper and a pen, and he's like, write your name. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, write your name. I'm like, all right. Wrote it with my left hand. He's like, are you left-handed? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, write your name right-handed. And I got through I think C and then part of the O. He's like, all right, scrap that. And that was it. He's like, I'll see you in the morning. I'm like, all right, cool. Sounds good, man. Thinking, we've been out there. You go to Lake Erie, we're going to go either pull wire, or you're going to go troll harnesses or cranks or something like that. We get in the boat, whatever. And he's like, all right, come here. We went and sat down middle of nowhere, just out there floating around by himself. He's like, all right, this is what we're going to do. This is where we're going. Well, not really where we're going, but he's like, this is what we're going to do. And he's like, I'm going to need 110% out of you all day. And he's like, when we get a fish coming, he's like, you got to be there and be ready. And I'm like, all right, cool. That's it. Well, all of a sudden we cross the Canadian border. We're up in Ontario, and get there and start fishing and, doing our thing with, obviously everybody knows champ swimmers, right? So, and, you think that he's like, yeah, you got to rip it. And I'm like, all right, cool. And he's like, no, he's like, you got to rip it. And I'm like, dude, You want me to do this for the next 6 hours? Like, I'm like, holy crap. Yeah. You know,
Right.
because you got to build muscle memory when you're fishing like that. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're flipping a 1 ounce bait in grass. It doesn't matter if you're ripping a bait, you know, shivering, ripping wraps, whatever. Like, if you're not doing that, you don't have that muscle built up to do that. So, yeah. Then we proceeded to just go at them. And it was probably one of the coolest things to see a guy look at what he's looking at on a screen, digest the information, and literally be able to almost call it, not call a shot, but pretty damn close.
It's coming.
Yeah. And it was cool because I was fishing a totally different way off side scan, because you could see as we're moving around, side scan would show a pocket of weeds, this, that, and the other thing. You could see individual fish a little bit, and you just kind of fan cast that area. But yeah, we, you know, tag team throughout the day. You know, he caught, I think we had a 30 and a 31 incher within the first half hour. And like,
Wow.
yeah, we were both like, oh my God, dude, this is insane. And so, you know, throughout the day we went and bounced some spots. And at one point we were fishing an area and I caught, I think like 5 or 6 5-pounders. Like every 10 minutes I had one on. He's like, all right, dude, you got to cool it down on the 5-pounders. He's like, we might need those fish, you know, tomorrow or the day after. And I'm like, well, you want me to quit fishing? He's like, well, no, just keep fishing. But he's like, I just like you to catch a big one, or, you know, something like that. So, but anyways, yeah, we were done, I think at noon, or just, I think 11 noon, something like that. We rolled back and, checked in, and it was like 39 pounds on the scale. I'm like, I've never dropped live weight 39 pounds on the scale casting for fish. That's really hard to do. I mean, it's pretty spectacular. You know, Erie's a great body of water, but to go up there and do that was insane.
So what was the name about? Did you ever ask him what your name was about?
The what name?
Right, your name was about?
I think he wanted to know which, like, because Chase hates the fact that I switch all the reels over.
Yep.
And so I told him, I'm like, yeah, I'm left-handed. He's like, do you reel with your left or you reel with your right? And he reels with his left, right? So he's like, are you really left-handed? I'm like, yeah. So that was the test to see if I was actually left-handed or not. Yeah. So, and I mean, it was funny. Like, I look back and laugh. It's probably something that I'll never forget.
I actually had a coat in my boat this year for the first time that was left-handed. That I switched things around. So it never even dawned on me. And I grew up, my dad was left-handed, but he always fished right-handed, you know, so I didn't.
Yeah.
It never even dawned on me.
And so, like, you know, I get it for guys that, you know, fish with their right hand and reel with their left, because this is your power hand. When you're ripping a bait, like, you don't want to be ripping with the non-dominant hand, because you typically, you know, adhere to that, you know, arm or hand for doing anything related as far as power. Right. So, yeah, I never really asked him like what the reason was, but I think he was just checking to make sure if I was actually left-handed or not. Yeah.
So, and you went on to win the championship on the coast side, right?
Yeah.
So how was that for you?
It was
that
great
experience?
It was, it was a hell of an experience. You know, going into we finished day one. And, you know, John's like, hey man, like, you got to fish really hard tomorrow, you know, so we can fish on day 3 together. And so Dino Nalderson, who's right here from the Fox Valley, I had him on day 2. We went out and, you know, we didn't have a fish in the boat at 10:30. And I'm like, how, like, what do we, you know, that's when you go to Erie and you don't have fish, you know, and you got fish on the graph everywhere around you. So when you're not catching them and you're seeing people catch them, you're like, man, it's just
tough to take.
Yeah. It feels like, you know, you're just ripping a little bit off and it's just slipping away a little bit and you're trying to pull the rope back. But, you know, fortunately we were able to scrap together. I think we scrapped together like 24 some pounds. And, you know, I think I was able to keep the lead by 1.5 pounds. Which was crazy. I didn't think that. I honestly, going in, I was like, man, I don't think I'll keep the lead. You know, I thought maybe I would keep in the top 10 to fish on day 3, but I didn't think that I was going to be able to stay in the top spot. So John and I jumped back in the boat on day 3 together. You know, we pretty much knew like, hey, this is what we're going to go do. This is what we're doing. We already had a day in the boat. So the one advantage I think that we did have is that we spent the whole day in the boat initially on day 1. So we understood how to move around the boat and how I needed to adapt to the boat for him, you know, to maximize our time, maximize efficiency, etc. And kind of know what my responsibilities are too. So, you know, making sure that we're putting, you know, G-juice in the live well, making sure water levels were good, making sure we're checking on the fish, especially when you're standing back there. You know, he's focused on, angles, boat control, etc. Like my responsibility wasn't just to catch fish or be a net man. Like, hey, manage the fish, this and that and whatnot.
So
But
what's it like being a co? If somebody asked you, hey, I'm thinking about being a co next year, what would your advice be to them?
I guess my advice, I mean, there's a lot of factors that come, like, because you can be a co, right?
Yep.
If you log on to the National Walleye Tour, when the
can sign
schedule
up.
comes out, and like you can just dump your $2,000, and like I'm a co-angler.
Yep.
Okay, good. But I think that as fishing progresses, the boats and everything evolves. There's a lot of, I wouldn't say I think there's an expectation, especially for a guy that travels, from event to event.
Yep.
Especially for, the guys that are coming from New York, the guys that are coming from, let's just say Montana or the Dakotas, and they come here and, they're coming here. Most of them aren't collecting a true paycheck from a fishing company to go fishing. Right.
Yep.
A lot of those guys are spending their own dollar, their own time, whether they own a business or they sold a business or whatnot. Right. So I think when they come here, their expectation is that they want to have somebody in the boat that is a part of the team, because you're a team. Like your weight's a team. You're the net man. You're the second angler in the boat. It's not like a bass event, right? Where you're a co-angler, like you get your 3 fish and the guy's fishing for 5 in the front, and like you get backboated. Like you're not getting backboated. It's not advantageous to get backboated on a walleye event.
They need you.
Right. So the expectation is or I guess my perception is that these guys are expecting to have a co-angler that is able to maneuver around the boat, to be a good net man, to be able to fish, and where like you can just be a co-angler, but really understand what it takes for those guys to be able to maneuver a boat around, and help them be an asset, right? So prepare yourself, right? Dry bag, rain suit, all that stuff. Because if you're soaked, cold, and freezing,
I don't need much help.
yeah. I mean, if you're in Detroit, let's say in March, and you just show up with a rain suit, like,
Right.
dude, it's 31 degrees outside. And by the way, we're making a run, like you're going to be freezing. Your hands don't work. And also too, like at that point, if you don't prepare yourself with the right equipment and I'm not saying you need to bring rods and reels and everything else, just your own personal equipment, like some food, right? It takes energy, especially when it's cold out. You got to be digesting some food to keep fueling your body. Water. I mean, obviously I bring sandwiches. But I think just preparing yourself to be out there on a full day on the water. And if you can too, I've said it time and time again, you don't have to travel out there and fish for 10 days, the whole 10 days where everybody goes out there. But if you can link up with somebody and maybe just get a day or two of pre-fishing, because even if you don't do those techniques in the event that you're pre-fishing with somebody, you still have an understanding of a body of water, let's say, right?
Get extra days in that water.
Well, even if you're just navigating the waterway, where there's some hazards, where there things are. Like you can be a second set of eyes. You can say, like, there's nothing to say that you can't suggest, like, hey, if the fish is off the bottom and we're not catching them, like maybe do your own thing to bring a bait up, or hey, should we bring baits up? Or like, there's small things that you understand with just going out there and getting on the body of water instead of just showing up the night of the event. Hey, check in. Here's the thing. Like, oh, you're boat 42. Like, hey, I'm so-and-so. Hey, nice to meet you. Like,
pick up at the hotel.
Yeah. And then you just show up and jump in the boat. Like, not that you shouldn't, I guess I'm not bashing the guys that do that, because I understand that there's certain factors that, maybe you don't have the flexibility to do that. But if you do, and especially if you're going to fish a full season, right? I mean, I understand the guys that want to cherry pick one event because it's coming close, or it's a new experience or anything like that. But if you're going to fish a full season, prepare yourself as if you were going out there, and understand that you got money on the line too. I mean, $500 an event, like that's not cheap.
No, that's
right.
Yeah.
And your goal is to go out there and obviously, everybody wants to cash a check, win, etc. So put the things in that, control the variables that you can control for everybody in the boat.
So as a guy that has fished a couple years now on the coast side and done some in the past, and you won a championship, will you make a switch to the other side of the boat?
That's the golden question, I think. You know, there's a lot of bodies of water.
Yep.
There's a lot of expense that goes into it. And if you want to make a career out of it, I think that taking it slow and understanding the dynamics and how things work, not only within just the fishing tournament, but within the industry,
Yep.
and understanding the business piece of it. I think that's kind of where I'm at right now. Obviously, I have my own business as well, so that takes precedence over fishing any day of the week. So I really don't have a time, like I'm not on a timeline.
Nope.
I think when,
But is it something that you're eyeing up for the future? Something that you would like to do? Something you're,
yeah, I would definitely foresee the future of me switching over to, you know, on the pro side of things. When that is, I really can't say. I know that personally, like there's a lot of techniques out there that I need to really dial in. As you can see, I mean, if you're watching the National Walleye Tour with guys, like there's a consistent group of guys that are always catching fish on that innovative side.
Yep.
You know, and it's like I said, it's not cheap. So if you don't go out there and cash some checks,
Yep. It's
like
tough.
it's really tough, especially if you're going out on your own dollar, right? But you know, sponsors expect so much out of you too, and performance, you know, et
Results
cetera.
they
So
want.
to say when, I have no idea.
But coming someday.
Yeah, I would say coming someday. I mean, I need to get back into probably fishing, just, you know, some AIM events around here, just kind of get back in that and running a boat, because, you know, it's a totally different thing when you're a co-angler and somebody that's been doing it for 20 years and they're running their boat and they have a system. You know, when you jump to that side, as far as boat control, speed, all those factors, like you're not thinking about that all the time, where the guy in the, you know, driver's seat is. So it's a little bit different when you jump in there and
the
start.
boat control is a different beast in itself, and these aren't small boats either. These aren't, you know,
No.
these are big ass boats.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't even know how much more you can really build them bigger or, you know, faster. But yeah, so I mean, those are all factors. And like I said, you know, expenses are a huge thing too. So, you know, I'm turning 31 here in a couple weeks, and I would expect, you know, probably a 5-year plan or something like that. Like I said, I'm pretty fortunate to have the opportunity of what I'm doing right now, and learning from those guys is a huge thing. And it's not just a fishing piece too. Like last year when we were on the Bay of Green Bay. Hey, bust out the socket set and tighten down your big motor because you're running across big water. Like those are key pieces that you got to learn, because, you know, you're your own mechanic, you're your own doctor, you're your own, like there's no timeouts, got a sub to put in, none of that stuff. So it's not just the fishing aspect of it too. It's also the maintenance side of it. It's the preparation and everything else that goes into it, that there's key things that are setting certain individuals higher than what other people are.
Being able
Because
to maintain and stay on the water is a very big part of it.
yeah, I mean, not only your body, but obviously your equipment,
A lot of your equipment, your truck, the whole works, everything's got to
yeah, I mean, it's insane what, like, you look in some of these trucks and you're just like, I would have never thought to bring that.
right.
Right. Like it's not like a huge thing, but it's like when you need it, you got it.
Yeah, the randomness of things that and it seems like every tournament, everything I go through, it's something comes up. I should add that to the boat. I should add that to the truck. I should add this to that.
Right. Yeah. And I think traveling and doing everything that you're doing, that's where you can learn some of that stuff. That's why I think it's huge if you can travel with somebody, even a couple days if you drive out, but you just get to learn, you know, the mechanics of a boat, everything else, where if you are going to ever think about making that switch, I guess that's what I tell myself. Like, it's okay to stay on the co-angler side.
Gobble as much knowledge as
Well,
possible.
and I mean, if you can be a really good co-angler, like on the pro side, they know who's good co-anglers and they know who's not so good co-anglers, right? And so when you can step into the boat and they know a little bit, like, oh, hey, like you're so-and-so and like you can fish, you know, there's a little bit more comfort in the boat too, where like, hey, are you going to be able to net the fish? Or are you going to knock them off? Or are you going to grab the crankbait before you hit the fish? Like those things, it gives them a little bit at ease too, where I think they fish a little bit more freely and don't have to worry about so many different factors. Yeah. So yeah, it's all, I mean, to answer your question, I'm not sure. I don't know.
Well, let's talk about what you're doing right now.
Yeah. So right now, I left. I had a really good job with a local painting contractor here doing industrial and commercial painting. It was doing that for 4 years. Got out of the Marine Corps, had a couple different jobs, and then found that. And we were actually at an event down in Prairie du Chien and had the opportunity to meet the guys from North Dakota. Long story short, we went through, talked about it, and I'm doing aqua traction.
Nice. How's that been for you?
It's been really good. It's something that I guess let me backtrack that. I finally found something that I'm passionate about and I enjoy going to work every day.
That's nice.
There's a lot of responsibility with it.
Yep.
There's a lot of things that I think when you own your own business that you start to realize, because there's not just a dead set book of how to do it.
Right.
And it's a massive learning curve, and not cheap, but it's something that I truly can see myself doing for the long term. And I think just because also, most of the people that you're doing aqua, for are people that are on the water. Right. So you already have, I'm not a window salesman, right?
Right.
So you can relate to those people. You have a good conversation. Yep. And I think that, as far as the product goes, there's various products out there, but I think the aqua traction piece speaks for itself, not just aesthetics. Everything, you can make anything look cool, right?
Yeah,
but there's a performance side of it too that really sets the bar above, I think, what is out there, on a mainstream level.
Yep.
Where aqua traction is obviously the performance side of it's obviously in a higher caliber.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I love it. I have a shop.
And you're able to marry your two passions kind of together, and basically.
Yeah. And you meet a ton of great people doing it, right? So most guys that fish are really awesome guys. And when you fish as well, they have something that they can relate to. So it's not like you're going there and having that awkward conversation, right. And I don't look at it as like I'm selling a product, right? I mean, the product kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah, for sure.
And your work speaks for itself. But there's a lot of people out there that are having, let's be honest, right? Not everybody can go out and afford a $130,000 boat.
Correct.
So there's a lot of people at that point now that are buying either used boats or have a boat that, they inherit or they've had for a while that they're looking at, hey, let's, do I need to go buy a brand new 2023 boat or can we stick 5,000, a couple thousand bucks into the boat, not just in the floor, but, upgrade electronics, that stuff. Is that a little bit more advantageous?
Right. For sure. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do in the boat with it. Obviously, like the putting new floors and even wrapping the boats. It's not that expensive to wrap. You don't have to put logos on the boat, but you can re-lap a boat, make it look nice.
Yeah, you can save your drop boat by doing it. Yeah.
It is, it's crazy the amount of money is in new boats.
Yeah.
But they're there for a reason. Some people decide to go that direction, but you also there's a lot of I was talking to John the other day. There's a lot of older Ranger boats that are just dying to be made over. They're just ready to go. I mean, there's parts for everything. Those boats, there's hundreds of them on Marketplace at the time, and you can go through them and spend, like you said, $5,000-6,000 and really do a great makeover and have a great boat when you're done.
Yeah, at the end of the day, is a 2023 boat gonna win you more events than a 2018?
Nope.
No. Because if you know how to drive a boat, you know how to maintain a boat, and you know how to get to the fish for the fish, and catch them, that little difference in, a couple of years, isn't going to be the defining factor of you being successful or not out on the water.
Yeah.
So, and at some point there has to be a realization okay, how much more can somebody, because the cost of boats are going way at a faster rate, more than what people are making as far as, their yearly income. So at some point, especially now, right? People are going to laugh at you if you walk in there. You're like, hey, I'd like a loan for 120 grand. They're, at 7 or 8, 10% interest.
Right. Oh yeah. That'd be terrible now. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, at some point though, too, people realize hey, I can't strap myself on a payment because even though you can afford the boat, well, okay, you got to put fuel in it. You got to pay insurance. You got to travel to and from events. You got to pay for, expenses that are just above and beyond just the boat to run the boat.
You got to put it someplace, That's
yeah.
Part,
so
23 foot or 21 foot boats, 23, 24 feet long. That's a big garage.
Yeah, it's a big garage. So I think, talking about the aqua traction piece, a lot of people are starting to realize, not only educating themselves on the product, but starting to come to the realization hey, we don't have to go out and spend money on a new boat.
Right.
We can, we can update some stuff in here. And, honestly, like whether you got snap-in carpet or you got a floor that's, glued down or anything like that, like we can remove that old stuff and turn your floor into something that's an advantage for you being out on the water. Heat wise, like carpet sucks, glass gets super hot.
Yep.
Where putting a floor in your boat is
Right.
relatively like inexpensive if you look at the grand scheme of things for doing it. So,
and it's a lot more comfortable and fatigue.
Yeah.
So it makes it being on the water easier, longer, and
yeah, even with like even a darker color, right? People are, that's the number one question. Like, well, hey, if I got, black boat, can I put a black floor in? Is it going to get hot? I'm like, it's going to stay relative to the outside temperature, 3 to 5 degrees. Now, if you have a black boat and you're going out on the bay when it's 91 degrees outside and you got black gunnels, like, dude, that's going to be an oven no matter what you put in there. I don't care if you had an ice, like if you put bags of ice in there, it's going to be bacon in there. But yeah, long story short, it's been going good. Like I said, I have a shop, had a lot of people that have, reached out and I've done some work for, locally. And then obviously, west from here and stuff. And, it's been a learning curve. Not every boat's been awesome. There's been obviously, like I said, learning where and what to do in certain boats. Yeah, I mean, there's one, I had a boat that wasn't too long ago that I grabbed a wrong line in AutoCAD and basically married 2 wrong lines and printed the floor, and it came out like all wrong. And I was like, well, it sucks. Like you can be upset about it. You can go on and cry about it, whatever. But it was a good learning curve because you learn something and you learn pretty quick, especially when it hits you in the pocketbook.
That's
so
correct.
It's been an adventure. But
so how will they get a hold of you if they want to talk to you about that?
They can go on Aqua Traction of Central Wisconsin on Facebook or Instagram, same thing, Aqua Traction of Central Wisconsin. I have a Facebook page. My cell phone number's on there. My email's on there.
Awesome.
And if you go on Google, I think you can find it on, Google. Yep. You can just type that in as well. Facebook Messenger, you can shoot me a message. Like I said, you can shoot me a text, email, whatever. I mean, basically the information's out there. Okay. And there's plenty of photos out there. If you have, if anybody has questions, feel free to reach out. I can send you the information. I can send you the color sample board. You can stop out at the shop. You can FaceTime me, whatever it takes. If you want to get a hold of it, by all means, like I'd be happy to answer any questions. And, even if you're not ready for it now, but you want some information to think about, like, hey, like, okay, we're in the middle of summer.
Yep.
Some guys want to do their whole entire boat, rip carpet off the front deck and put pads down. I'm like, well, do you really want me to take your boat and have it ripped apart for so long? Mm-hmm. Because you have to get it all torn apart to get a scan, to get everything. And then, there's lead times on cutting and everything. So I don't think ripping a boat apart in July is obviously ideal if you're out fishing. So
you're saying the winter time, you're busy.
Yeah, I think I'm just realistic with a lot of people too, right? If you have snap-in carpet and you want to do, the back deck, obviously, like a lot of guys now, especially people that fish and troll, right? Mm-hmm. They want cockpit because there's, you got the non-slip. Yep. There's an anti-fatigue. Yep. Especially the guys that go out to Erie even, right? So you get some adverse weather in, March or in December, that non-slip is huge. Well, guys start to realize, hey, when I put 18, 20 fish in my live well out in Erie and it freezes at night, then you're ripping your carpet off already, but trying to open up the live well hatches. Mm-hmm. Then you got glass that's in the back there that you step on to go net fish, right? Hey.
Dangerously slippery.
Yeah. Do you want to slip into 50-degree water in December, 5 miles offshore? Like, no.
Oh, ain't gonna work.
Yeah, it's pretty cold. So, my biggest suggestion to a lot of people is let's do, if you have your cockpit and you want to do that, we can do that. It's really ininvasive if we're not tearing anything out, if snap in, non-skid, whatnot. Yep. And then over the winter time, we can always add to it, especially if it's a new product for you haven't used it. I'm not the guy that's shoving it down people's throat that you got to do the whole thing. I mean, just be realistic too, right? Like if you're done fishing at the end of the year, bring your boat over. I can have it, for a couple of weeks, get it done and get it back to you instead of, back and forth or coming to where you are and tearing your boat apart and then you can't use it. Especially, we're 6 weeks from our Labor Day weekend. Yeah. So a lot of people plan on trips. Guys are going to Canada right now. Guys are going on trips, all around the Midwest with their families, kind of knocking out that last thing that they want to do before school starts, etc. So, And a lot of guys that fish hunt.
Yep.
So when November rolls around, the boat's really not the main priority
Right, yeah.
anymore, right? It's killing the 160 incher. So, which I've never killed a 160 incher, but everybody would like to. So yeah, I mean, I have a heated shop. You can bring it in there. It's fully secure. And I think that's just a little bit more realistic approach for that piece of it. So, but yeah, if anybody has any questions or, wants to have a phone call and just talk about the product, stop out of the shop, whatever, I'd be more than happy to answer anything.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on. It was awesome to talk to you about how everything's kind of come together for you. And
Yeah. Thank you for
hopefully
having me.
years of success to go forward here.
Yeah.
So, if you want to check out or be on an episode of Wally Chronicles, hit me up on my socials and we'll get you on here. And remember, there's 2 things you can do that improve everybody's life. 1 is you can give them a smile and it'll change your day. And 2 is you can take them fishing. So have a great day.